Hey guys, and welcome to a showdown featuring myself, a rubber duck of war, leading the mighty High Elves up against Gianni and the Vampire Counts. Should be a good fun showdown. This is often touted as a very favourable matchup now to the High Elves, particularly because they do love to bring those glorious little Doom boxes. But we're going to be trying something a little bit different, going a bit more old school with our High Elf approach here, going a pre-box, shall we say, and going for a bit more of a spread out range field build. So for our army, we do have cheap and cheerful spearmen holding down the lines. A couple in the front and a couple on the flanks as well. They're not really here to win any fights, simply hold back the tide of undeadly horrors that are approaching us and buying more and more time for our ranged troops to really pay those dollar bills. The Spearmen actually have a really cool colour scheme. We are going to be playing with Elfarion the Grim and his sub-faction, and he should be coming in on top of his mighty bird. Coming in here with the Helm, as well as Fang Sword. Now, the Fang Sword's quite a nice buff to himself, but also imbues magic damage, which is pretty key, of course, up against the Vampire Counts and all those undeadly ghosts they can bring to the table. We have Tempest in an attempt to win the air game, as well as Hand of Glory and Apotheosis to help buff up our own troops. In the secondary line, we do have some units of Sisters of Avelorn, 2 units in fact. Now, these ladies can dish out horrendous amounts of firepower, which can really slaughter the enemy key targets rather quickly if you can protect them. They are pretty expensive, but certainly can dish out the pain. And to protect them, we have the Keepers of the Flame. Regiment-renowned Phoenix Guard. I've spoken quite a lot about Phoenix Guard in general, or elite infantry. And while I think at the moment in the current meta, it's not necessarily the best style of unit, but including 1 or 2 heavy elite units here and there can certainly work well. And in this matchup in particular, Vampire Counts can really struggle with such units if they haven't brought the perfect spells. Just backing these guys up, we do have some Lothran Seaguard with shields. These guys are going to be pouring more fire onto the enemy. So you shut down the Sisters, that's all good for you. I'm now going to shoot you to pieces with the Lothran Seaguard, who themselves are being protected by Silver Helms and some Illyrian Reavers. As for my opponent, he's been a little bit sneaky. Hiding down here in the trees, we have the Dire Pack. These mangy mutts are very fast, anti-large, and all round a pretty damn good pick. I have no idea they're here because they vanguarded into the trees and are hidden, and there's certainly a big old pain in my rear if they can flank and get into my juicy central core of my build, which is really where my damage is going to be dealt. For the Vampire Count forces, we have Skeleton Spearmen mixed in with zombies, so just cheap, cheerful chaff that is happy and summoned to be here, just ready to throw down some fighting and allow the rest of the build to actually dish out the pain. And by God, is it a cool build. We have triple Blood Knights! 3 of these bad boys, some of the best cavalry in the game, looking to cycle charge me into oblivion. We have Double Banshee as well. These guys, of course, are ethereal and have magic damage, and can be a big pain in the butt to enemy characters. We have Vlad von Karstein leading the army. He is an absolute tank here. We have the Master of Beguilement, as well as Arcane Conduit, Wind of Death, Curse of Years, Raise Dead, Gaze of Nagash, Dance Macabre, and Invocation of the Heck. Way too many spells for one character to bring would be my little bit of feedback here, but nonetheless, it does make him very flexible indeed. And we have a Mortis Engine just in the back, hanging back a little bit, looking to grind down our forces where possible. Should be a good fun game. Both of us seem to be experimenting a little bit. Of course, bringing the Grim is a little bit risky. The normal way High Elves do play this is you get something like 3 or 4 units of Phoenix Guard. You make a box of them with 1 unit of Sisters in the middle and someone like Teclis and a Dragon in the sky, and it's pretty damn disgusting. But I wanted to try something out a little bit different. Here we go with our Regal Blue. We're going to be advancing, trying to use the train on our left-hand flank here to protect our side, which is going to be quite useful because those Spearmen will hold for a decent amount of time. We don't actually have that many units of them, or that many of them, so the Silver Helms and Illyrian Reavers are really going to have to work wonders here to try to protect that front line. Blood Knights seem to be disappearing to the flank here, looking to take the long way around and whip all the way up and around and start abusing us on the side. The Mortis Engine is getting lit up right now. Sisters do start to pour fire in, some of them aiming for the Banshees as well, but good duking by my opponent, moving back and forth to avoid as many shots as possible, though some zombies will be getting caught in the crossfire here. The Grim's flying up and above, just looking to get a cheeky little charge down on some characters maybe if they do wander a bit too far away from their friends. And I still have no idea about the Dire Pack who is currently lurking in the wings. Sisters continue to pour in fire, actually doing some pretty decent damage to Vlad von Karstein as well as the Banshees. And now the Lothran Seaguard are also in range, starting to rain fire down upon the Spearmen, who do crash in with a thunderous charge into the Spearmen, but the shield wall will hold firm at least for now. Particularly with missile support, we shouldn't do too bad. And then over on the far side, you can see the Silver Helms do kind of a lovely little shock charge onto those skeleton Spearmen, getting them down about a third health. Vlad's been a bit of a pain already, starting to drive into the heart of my build, but luckily for us, that Mortis engine is getting lit on fire. The Sisters of Avelorn just abusing it. Look at its health just tear itself apart. And yeah, that's going to go down rather quickly. Blood Knights are continuing to float round the rear, trying to get into the juicy pocket of Seaguard and Sisters, but the Keepers of Flame are dogging their footsteps, trying to position themselves the best way possible in between the Knights and myself. More Blood Knights are starting to come out though, and this is where the battle's going to get real messy. Sure, it's gone well for us so far. You can see these spearmen have been dealt with, although the Grim is currently landing. We're going to have to force our Silver Helms to take an engagement up against Blood Knights, which certainly is not going to go in our favour whatsoever. Luckily, we do have that missile support, as well as a Hand of Glory to try and buff up our Silver Helms, but in come the Die Pack as well, lurching and jiving themselves from the forest to catch us in a lovely little rear attack there. Vlad likewise has managed to push through, and all the Blood Knights jump onto individual targets. Seaguard, both units getting shut down here. We do manage to pop an Apotheosis, and we're trying to get the Sisters to support, but once again my opponent with some beautiful micro shall summon some zombies on top of us as well, and all of a sudden what looked to be going quite comfortably is going a bit disastrously, as Avelorn the Grim does get that -40 melee attack popped on him. Both the Banshees are just hounding him down and he can't escape. The Blood Knights are pinning him in place, and yes, we're getting some decent crossfire here with the Lothran Seaguard, but this could be game over if the Grim goes down. Front line is holding relatively effectively, but the back line is an absolute mess. Luckily, the Keepers of Flame have used their mighty halberds to dish out the damage here to the Blood Knights, who certainly overstayed their welcome and are being driven away back towards the centre of the fight, but I don't know if they're going to be able to escape for good with the Keeper of Flames keeping up with them. The Mortis engine, though it did get pressured a heavy amount, has managed to force its way into the back line now onto the Sisters of Avelorn, and in the distance I have sacrificed Silver Helms to try to distract that enemy as much as possible and allow Avelorn to once again come back to us. And it looks like he is routed, but he is now back up into the skies, so routing does mean that your unit will take the quickest possible route out of an engagement, and that's the best thing for us right now. We can get him back, heal him up, as I really did not want him going down there. At least it did distract a large portion of my opponent's build, certainly stuff that should be getting into the back line. Lothran and Seaguard, though, are currently dueling Vlad von Carstein and some Blood Knights. They're not going to be having a good time with that whatsoever. Sisters of Avelorn are continuing to fire at the moment, but Blood Knights shall be charging in to try to finish them off. And the Mortis engine is still going strong. In the distance, we can see Blood Knights are being dragged down eventually by Spearmen. This unit was already crumbling, so it does seem like it's gone in for a last-ditch suicide charge. More Seaguard are pouring on the pressure here, and both our units of Sisters are still active, although this one is kind of being terrified away. More Lothran and Seaguard are rallying to the cause, and we can continue to pour in fire as my opponent does blob up a tiny bit too much on our spear wall, particularly the Keeper of Flames here, who's done some really fantastic work so far, and now getting engaged with the Mortis engine, and with ethereal explosion there, it does indeed go down. Hand of Glory is popped on the Keepers of Flame to try to enable them to deal good damage here to Vlad von Carstein and the other enemy characters. Blood Knights are being obliterated now from all sides with a lovely little firing platform now. You see, we've not put all our archers in the same position. We've got them all dotted around a little bit. So if you charge down one, you're still going to get shot by all the others. Invocation Heck does go down these Blood Knights, and Avelorn, not learning his lesson from his first charge down, does decide to go headlong into some Blood Knights to try to finish them off and save the Sisters of Avelorn. He is a bit of a softy at heart, and he's got a soft spot for that unit, it seems. Once again, he has been debuffed. Fang Sword, though, should be giving him some lovely physical resistance and hopefully allowing him to pull back up into the air once more. The Die Pack pounding after him, but luckily we do have the Lothran Seaguard just to engage there, pin those guys in place, and we have a charge coming from the Illyrian Reavers, trying to finish off those nasty doggos once and for all, and Avelorn may even decide to charge down in to try to beat them back. This unit of Lothran Seaguard is quite happily firing. We're going to completely ignore the frontline fight for now. It has been won realistically, and the Spearmen are going to start coming back into the main blob fight as more Blood Knights do get dragged down off their mighty steeds, but not before they get a lovely little lancing charge into the Sisters, who are relatively decent melee combatants, at least as far as ranged troops go. Keepers of Flame are very healthy here in the late game, and unless there's a Wind of Death coming down, these guys are going to be a massive nuisance. Bounce power has started to go in our favour here, and Vlad's doing some good work. Up to 29 kills, has been engaged with expensive troops for the majority of the battle, but the Keepers of Flame are really tough cookies. Blood Knights continue to try to harass, likewise are the Dire Pack, but the Die Pack are at the moment under -39 leadership, certainly not too good for them, and the Blood Knights down here seem to be crumbling into dust. Lothar and Seagard will once again be able to rain fire down upon my opponent with more units darted all around the battlefield. We do pop the little unbreakable on a unit of spearmen just as they're terrified and run for their lives, which is a little bit depressing. So they're unbreakable but still fleeing. And it looks like we are going to be popping an apotheosis down on the Keeper of Flames just to keep them nice and topped up. So hopefully they can duel the Banshees rather effectively, despite the fact they actually do have magic damage, which is rather interesting. I completely forgot about that earlier on. Avelorn the Grim is looking to charge down once more to clatter into the enemy, and with cycle charging the Banshees, he certainly should be in a good position. Keepers of Flame continuing to dish out the damage on Vlad von Carstein, who's getting very low, and army losses do seem to be setting in as more spearmen do join the party, and we have a glorious surround. You can see these Keepers of Flames twirling those halberds around with deft touch then. Mastering 1,000 years and 1,000 battles does drag down those annoying little vampires. A Pyrrhic victory for sure, though. We lost a bucket ton of troops and it got really hairy there during the midpoint of the battle when my opponent did some good work with his Blood Knight and Dire Pack to just shut down all of my ranged troops. That's where all my firepower was. So well played to my opponent there, did a good job, but luckily, due to managing to drag my opponent through some of my combat troops and the use of cavalry and Elfarium, we did manage to stabilise and kind of save the day. And my opponent almost assassinating Elfarium was a huge turning moment because he invested a lot of troops to hunt him down, and because he didn't kill him, it enabled me to stabilise my backline because a lot of his troops who could have pushed my backline were busy hunting him down. I think it still was a good gambit and a good idea by the Vampire Counts, but in the end it did not pay off. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. We will get to damage dealt and damage value of all the units in just a second, but if you did enjoy, make sure to leave a big fat juicy thumbs up down below, subscribe for more glorious Total War Warhammer content, and leave a comment. What did you enjoy about the battle? Who was your MVP? What was your favourite army here? What do you think of this matchup in general? Or just simply yell quack at me. I really do appreciate all the comments. They've been really lovely recently. It's always good fun to read through them. There are links down below in the description to my Discord, where you can submit replays to me, get involved in the multiplayer scene in general, events I host, and all that good stuff. There's also links to my Patreon, where you can support the channel, and my Games Planet account, where you guys can get money off games such as Total War Warhammer 3, the next DLC, and all that glorious stuff. But anyway, on to the damage dealt and damage value, the real reason we're all here. Avelorn the Grim, well, he's still going to be pretty grim tonight. 585 damage value, yeah, not doing too good. And all round Avelorn the Grim, I think, is a pretty poor lord. Now, overall, don't get me wrong, he can certainly do some decent damage. He can win the air game rather effectively. Tempest is a really nice combination for him. He's your mage and lord all wrapped into one, but he's a bit too expensive, in my opinion, to make him a competitive choice. The Spearmen performed wonders. You can see massive kills across the board, 3 of them getting over 100 kills. But the damage value, of course, is going to be pretty pitiful. 400 damage value here, 257, 574. But they did their job. They held the line and they cleared out the chaff, which is one thing you really need to do up against the Vampire Counts. Keepers of Flame were absolutely fantastic. 3,390 damage value. That is certainly paying for yourself. And as I said before, Phoenix Guard, elite halberd units, Temple Guard, Phoenix Guard, chosen with halberds and great weapons, can be really quite powerful in this matchup if you have tools to deal with the Mortis engines, which can normally drain them down. Lothar and Seagard did pretty damn good as well. 1.4k damage value, 646 and 1,310. Likewise, the Sisters of Avelorn really did bring the pain. 2,441 damage value here, 1,183 on the other unit. This really was a showcase of that elite bowfire, just pouring on the damage, taking out and assassinating key targets, and going rather wide and kind of spreading them out, so that my opponent really couldn't shut down my firebase with one fell swoop. Every time Blood Knights hopped on one unit, we would crossfire them with other units as well. Ilian Reavers and Silver Helms didn't get the greatest damage value, but they did perform a pretty pivotal role, plugging gaps and holding back the enemy as long as possible, which allowed the other units to get better damage value. As for my opponent, Vlad von Carstein only got 629 damage value, and this can be one of the problems of really tanky foot characters like Sigvald and Vlad. They are competitive, they are very good, but sometimes in some battles, they're just going to get bogged down with Spearmen and Seagard and other such units, and yeah, you're not that fast, so they can kind of struggle to keep up with the Elvish forces and not really be where they need to be in the battle to get that glorious value. Both the Banshees were a bit of a pain, 620 and 853 damage value. Did a fantastic job hunting down Avelorn during that midpoint of the battle. Zombies, of course, were simply here to die. I mean, this unit got 10 kills, which is very impressive for zombies. But apart from that, the infantry force was simply here to be the anvil, the kind of fleshy, rotten anvil for the Blood Knights. And the Blood Knights, they did a pretty damn insane. 1,800 damage value, only 400 on this unit, but the other one 1.3. Okay, not quite as impressive as I thought. They got into the back line well and got some value where they could, but the value's good, and I've seen far more though on Blood Knights before this. First unit kind of tricked me there with the high damage value. The other is getting assassinated there by the bowfire. The die pack 1,100 damage value is pretty damn impressive, and I'm really kind of big shout out to my opponent for keeping the Mortis Engine alive as long as he did. It took so much damage early on, so to get 950 damage value from it, despite that early pressure, is very impressive indeed. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed. Until next time, peace, peace. And as always, stay awesome.